Viewer discretion is advised.
Grausbeck is the leader of a firm that bought the Celdicks in 2002. He made his money by being a partner in a venture capital firm. In addition to running the company that owns the Celtics and watching his team gladly trade away bums like Isaiah Thomas, Grausbeck also sits on several boards and probably takes warm baths in all of his money. The Boston Celtics. The Knicks' chief rival. You saw your pathway to the #1 seed get shattered like Gordon Hayward's ankle. You were successful in the 80s, but you had the ugliest group of humans assembled since the hills have eyes. You drafted a generational talent who died of an overdose. That's actually pretty sad. And of course, you have been relegated to being LeBron's Eastern Conference bitch the last 7 or so years. My dearest Brad Stevens, sorry you somehow lost the Coach of the Year to a guy that got fired. Also, we're about as excited to win next year's Eastern Conference and get swept out of the building as Gordon Hayward was during this gender reveal. Signed, Celtics fans everywhere. P.S. Hayward can't be upset right there. I mean, he really doesn't have a leg to stand on.
Daddy's always happy.
This might be one of the worst stat lines I have ever seen, as Antoine Walker went 1 of 15 from the field, 1 of 6 from downtown, 3 of 6 from the free throw line, and put up a measly 6 points in 30 minutes. I guess Walker was out there writing checks his ass couldn't cash. Rip Hamilton scored at will, dropping 29 points, and Ben Wallace had 11 boards. All of this horror was in front of the Celtics' home crowd. Easily the cheapest costume of all the mascots, Lucky the Leprechaun can be seen either firing up the crowd at TD Garden or stumbling out of an Irish-themed pub on St. Paddy's Day. One of the few mascots whose identity is actually known. It makes me think that maybe the mascots hide their faces for a reason. What girl wants to bring Lucky the Leprechaun home to her parents? And what happens when he gets old? Usually mascots can be swapped out easily. I guess he ends up protecting cereal in his retirement. One of only 2 arenas to feature a parquet floor, TD Garden brought the same style hardwood with them from their Boston Garden days. The floor was originally made with its unique checkerboard pattern because after World War II, wood was really expensive and rare. Kinda like Boston players and their health in the playoffs. It's cool though, free pass to the conference finals this year. Hey, Boston isn't known for cheating, are they? In the 50s and 60s, Red Auerbach was famous for making his guests uncomfortable. He would assign visitors a new locker room every time. He would make sure at least one toilet was jammed by a shack-level deuce. Only cold water for the showers, and on top of that, he would have the boiler stoked to tip off and halftime to make the locker rooms toasty. What a dick. How many times do we have to hear that Jason Tatum tweeted at LeBron when he was 14? Then Big Bron proceeded to treat him like he was 14 in the 2018 Eastern Conference Finals. He did better the following year, which was the opposite of what ML Carr did when he was your coach. The only thing worse than his coaching was his moves as GM, but at least he didn't keep the big 3 around until they were being wheeled out there because of a leaky anus. An iconic arena designed by boxing promoter Tex Rickard. The Boston Garden was originally called Boston Madison Square Garden, a name that makes most Celtic fans puke. It played host of the glory years of the ugliest team in basketball. Despite it not having air conditioning, it was in use for nearly 60 years. It sat abandoned for 3 years after TD Garden was built and is now the site of the Hub on the Causeway, a commercial office building. I wonder if the lobby has parquet floors.
Lucky the Leprechaun, Boston. Lucky is basically a random white dude off the streets of Boston that gets put into a cheap leprechaun outfit. Pretty lame and not really a mascot. Rating 1 out of 10. Boston Celtics, Larry Bird. Of course, there will be the ring counters who cry that Bill Russell should be in this spot, and maybe he does. But it's my list, and I think Russell is one of the most overrated players in NBA history, so Larry Bird gets the nod. Bird won 3 rings, 3 MVPs, 2 Finals MVPs, while owning a complete all-around game matched by very few throughout NBA history. Every year year Bird was healthy in his prime, the Celtics were title contenders. While Bird's playoff career isn't as great as people remember, he still had many great playoff moments and was extremely exciting to watch play. If only he didn't shovel his mother's driveway and hurt his back. Boston Celtics, Eric Montross, a 7-footer out of UNC who was taken 9th overall by Boston in 1994 and lasted just 2 seasons with the team before spending the rest of his disappointing NBA career as a journeyman. Montross never found his way in the league, and considering his lack of shooting ability, wouldn't have even made it in today's NBA. Well, luckily for him, back in the 90s NBA, teams still had a fetish for trotting out 7-foot stiffs every game simply because they were tall. Boston Celtics, losing Game 7 at home in the 1973 Conference Finals after winning 68 games. The Celtics have raised 17 championship banners and been to 22 NBA Finals, but the team with the most regular season wins in franchise history was a team that didn't even make it that far. In fact, for all the legendary players the Celtics have, including Bill Russell and Larry Bird, it was a team that had neither of those that won the most games. The 73 Celtics were just on the upswing a few years after the legendary Bill Russell had retired and the Celtics dynasty had seemingly ended. Russell dynasty holdover John Havlicek, paired with MVP Dave Cowens and JoJo White, were ushering in a new era of Celtics dominance. And after dispatching the Hawks in the conference semis, they went to the Eastern Conference Finals versus the Knicks, and John Havlicek got hurt, and that's when things got messed up. The Knicks went up 3-1, but the Celtics did fight back to push to Game 7 at their home court, where they ended up losing in embarrassing fashion by 16 points. Hey, at least the next year they would win it. Boston Celtics, Marcus Smart. Smart's offensive game consists of being able to pass the ball a little bit and just bombing threes at a relatively inefficient rate. He's as hyped as he is because of his defense, which is very good, but still, perimeter defense in today's NBA means less than it ever has before, and honestly, him winning Defensive Player of the Year is a bit of a joke. He also has the Hustle Player of the Year awards, which whatever that means. He loves diving on the ground and diving around other players' legs, which is pretty dangerous and dirty. Again, he's not a bad player, but if he wasn't in Boston and on national television all the time, nobody would care who he is. Boston Celtics, Larry Bird, 1986. For a team that has 17 championships, it wasn't the easiest choice to make, but then again, it wasn't that difficult considering 1986 Larry Bird is one of the greatest players of all time. And his playoff run was no different, averaging 26, 9, and 8 a game on super efficiency. And it's fitting that his best game of the postseason was the last game of the postseason in Game 6 at home versus the Rockets to clinch his third and final NBA championship. Bird put up a 29-point triple-double, including 11 rebounds and 12 assists on high efficiency. Boston Celtics, Greg Kite. Kite played in 241 games for the Celtics, averaging a blistering 1.6 points per game on 41% shooting, this despite being a center. He also appeared in 53 playoff games, shooting 40% and averaging 1 point per game. The amazing thing is, Kite wasn't even that good in college either. In his 4 years at BYU, he averaged just 6.4 points per game on 45% shooting and 50% from the foul line. Is now a good time to mention that he has as many rings as Wilt and Hakeem Olajuwon. Boston Celtics. The Celtics are tied for the most titles in the history of the sport, but the vast majority of those came in the Jim Crow era, so they don't really count. Just one measly title over the last 36 seasons, the same as the Raptors and Cavaliers. Larry Bird wasn't as good as Magic Johnson and is a massively overrated playoff performer. I would slander Bill Russell, but all you racist-ass Celtics fans already did that by breaking into his home and shitting on his bed, among other things. Jason Tatum is just another Paul George, not a superstar.